President Trump weighs a major escalation into full-scale war against Iran as U.S. forces complete a 10th night of punishing strikes hitting targets in the south and the west. Hostilities spreading across the region. And welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Dana Perino.
Morning to you. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning on this Tuesday. The U.S. campaign against Iran escalating daily. The president's top military leaders will be on the Hill in a matter of hours, seeking emergency funding to maintain the operation and replenish weapon stockpiles.
Meanwhile, Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen declaring a naval blockade against Saudi Arabia. So this would choke off the southern gateway to the Red Sea, threatening to reduce global oil supplies and then, of course, widening that conflict further. We have Fox team coverage. Bret Baier joining us in a moment. Aishah Hasnie with more from the White House to kick us off. Hi, Aishah.
Hey, good morning to you, Bill. And Dana, the president is weighing whether or not he's going to expand this conflict. But the Iranians already are saying that they have totally waged a full-scale war with the U.S. In fact, this morning, there were strikes into Bahrain. Sirens were going off inside of that country as Iran began firing at U.S. targets there. Iran also lodging missiles and drones at Jordan and Kuwait's power and water plants overnight. There's also a maritime report out this morning that a tanker in the Strait of Hormuz was hit by an unknown projectile off the coast of Oman. A crew had to abandon the vessel, getting into a lifeboat for safety. This is all happening after U.S. forces pounded Iran last night. CENTCOM says it hit Iranian military command centers, maritime capabilities, missile and drone launch sites, and air defense systems. The escalation, of course, comes after 3 U.S. service members were killed over the weekend. A 4th was killed in a downed Iranian drone explosion in Iraq on Saturday. And the president issuing this stark warning on Truth Social yesterday. He writes, every time Iran kills an American soldier, they will pay for that killing many times over. 2 soldiers have been identified over the weekend. That is First Lieutenant Tyler James Freehan of Hawaii, just 25 years old, and also Private Isabella Gonzalez of Texas, 19 years old. The dignified transfer of the fallen service members was supposed to happen today. The president was supposed to be scheduled to attend that. That has now been rescheduled. The president, in just about the next hour here, will welcome and host the president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, here at the White House. And they'll be talking about disarming Hezbollah, as well as the Israeli military now withdrawing from certain sectors of southern Lebanon as part of this U.S. negotiated treaty. Back to you.
Yeah, that's a
Dan.
big and important meeting today. Yeah. Aishah, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to bring a special report anchor, Bret Baier. And Bret, good morning. Nice to see you. Good morning to you. There's talk of a 10-day ceasefire. I don't know how real it is or not. There's talk about making 2 different routes to the Strait of Hormuz, one that would favor the Iranians and one would favor the rest of the world. At the same time, you've got Iran right now. There are threats of incoming projectiles into Kuwait and Bahrain. So you put all that together, and where do you see it today?
Well, good morning again. I think there's frustration inside the White House and with the president about how they have bent over backwards to try to make some deal come together. And each and every time, the Iranians have stepped away, have broken the ceasefire agreement. Let's not even go back to the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, which sort of never took off. Now you have the Pakistanis, the Egyptians, the Omanis, the Qataris, all trying regional partners to get them to do a cool-off period for 10 days. I just don't think there's the appetite for that inside the White House, and more importantly with this president after the killing of those 2 soldiers in Jordan. Those missiles targeted barracks at the base in Jordan. It was not a mishap.
Right. And targeted indeed. Okay, the Institute for the Study of War had this analysis. Some senior Iranian officials appear concerned that the renewed conflict will deepen Iran's economic problems and threatens Iran's internal security. And then you also have, pick a newspaper, you can read a different headline. Here's from the Financial Times. Trump is slipping into an Iran quagmire. America cannot achieve its aims by negotiation, so regime change is back on the agenda. Is it?
I don't know if it is or not. Clearly, more bombing and stepped up escalation is, with the hopes that you're going to beat back the Iranians to the point where they say we can't do this anymore and we in earnest need to be at the table negotiating. I think Israel probably is still in the mindset of regime change, and so there's that dichotomy between the two nations doing this. Listen, I think that you have on Capitol Hill, there are some Republicans really worried about it. There are others that say finish the job. Democrats largely are using this as a political cudgel and saying that there is no end to this war. Right now, we don't see it. But Iran is in a bad place. And you had Treasury Secretary Bessent on this morning with Maria saying the economic fury, the sanctions, the things that are pressing Iran with 300% inflation and others are really having an effect, in his words.
I don't know how this plays in the midterms, but we're starting to look at them. A little more than 3 months to go, and our power rankings are out today. This is the soundbite that I think that's been played the most over the past 3 days. This is Van Jones. Remember Van Jones back with President Obama? I don't know if I would ever live to hear the day when he would talk about his party the following way. He thinks they've lost their minds. Roll it.
I am tired of a set of people on the very far left in the Democratic Party, my party, telling us that in order for us to be progressives, we now have to believe ideas and support ideas that are completely nuts. These are terrible ideas. These are awful ideas. Where did these ideas even come from?
So he talked about no police, no prisons, we can't deport anybody, even if they commit rape or murder. Israel should not exist. These are terrible ideas. He's clearly not a fan. No, and that's a red siren for Democrats. I think it is a flare being shot up by Van Jones. Also, you heard it from Bill Maher. You've heard others step up. I had John McCarthy on my panel last night saying more Democrats, in his words, need to do that because they fear that this is going to absorb all of the tension, all of the oxygen in the room when it comes to races that they need to win in states that are purple. And when you get to a purple state, some of that DSA, the Democratic Socialist agenda, is not selling in Middle America.
No, but it's selling for some places in pockets. So it's been fascinating to watch. Brett, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Brett.
You bet.
See you at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.